Greetings and welcome to Beatle Stuffology, where two old friends sit about and talk BS, Beatle stuff, on a track-by-track basis, pretty much for the sake of it. My name is JG McQuarrie, and I'm here with my co-host Andrew Deacon. Say hi, Andrew.
Hello, JG. I'd like to start in somber mood. I didn't tell you this before the recording, but I would like to start with an apology.
Okay.
I would like to apologize, dear listener. The last episode you would have heard was the episode on help, and I would like to offer my heartfelt apologies for an omission. We omitted to mention "Ouch," the Ruttles song, and that's been weighing on my mind since we recorded. And I would just like to enter into the record in that it's one of those Ruttles songs that is almost as good as the original.
Yeah, well, I guess I have to co-sign your apology, but also agree with all of that as well. Yeah, because it's great.
It is fantastic. As soon as we finished recording, I thought about getting you back online and asking if we could drop that in, but then I realised that nobody cares that much.
But it's still good. You don't know that. You don't know that at all.
Well, let's see what bulging mailbag we've had. It could be that I've just addressed something that someone has emailed in about, but only future us will know.
Well, we'll look forward to future us as discussing that.
Oh dear. Oh.
All right, good. Right, well, that's the apology out of the way. How's everything else in your life?
Yeah, it's fine. I'm looking forward to today's episode because it's one of my favourite Monkees songs.
Excellent. That's a good first take. This week we are going to be talking about The Night Before. Yeah. On you go then. Talk about The Night Before.
Okay, well, I like it, but not that much. It's a bit different. It's a little bit wacky, and it's fun, but it does what it needs to do, and then you can get on with the rest of the album. You can move on to some of perhaps the more serious songs. It's kind of Paul in seemingly light-hearted mood when it comes to the music, even if the lyrics are venturing into some of the John Lennon territory. But it's fun, but it seems to be kind of an overlooked, fun but slight track. And I have to say, actually, if you then compare it to some of the other slight tracks on previous albums, it's a lot better. So you can see there's a genuine upward curve in terms of the quality of these so-so album tracks, but it still pales in comparison to the top quality stuff.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. I definitely agree that it's a light and disposable song. It's not something that I think a lot of time has been spent on. And yeah, I do think it is a very well produced song. I think that's one of the ways it manages to kind of distinguish itself from. Is it too hard to say throwaway? Is that too strong? Throwaway
That's fair
material in
enough.
the past?
Yeah, yeah.
Or at
I mean,
least
they
it's
spent
worked.
5 hours in the studio working on it, so
Yeah.
it's not. I mean, obviously, in comparison to today, where they spent 5 hours just working on that initial opening beat, that's nothing. But compared to the way the Beatles worked in the past, that's still quite a substantial period of time just for one song.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously it is part of the movie, it's part of the soundtrack there. So when we sort of say, oh, throwaway or one of the lighter songs, it's still one which has been chosen to be part
Yeah.
of the film. So it's not something that is completely disposable. It's not act naturally. Spoilers. But it's yeah, it's a really well put together song, and you can hear the sort of general improvement in the way that material is recorded, and particularly at this time when we shift from 2-track to 4-track and then eventually to 8-track up at Abbey Road. The way that production and the technical kind of technical sort of skills which are involved in producing a song like that improve. It's a pretty straight line, and The Night Before definitely benefits from that. You can hear that there are ways this song is constructed that simply wouldn't have been possible, even probably in the preceding album.
One thing that kind of stood out for me when listening to it, again and again and again, and suddenly it clicked that we actually have a musical introduction rather than trying something with vocal harmony or something that's perhaps completely different and not in tune with the rest of the song. Actually, it's quite a simple, straightforward musical introduction to what you're going to hear. So that's kind of like a bit of a change and a bit of a step forward as well. So whether that was just a throwaway element and the fact they couldn't think of something, I don't think it matters. It sort of works because it introduced you to the fact that you've got an up-tempo, upbeat song that is not going to overstay its welcome.
Absolutely. And that little introduction, it's very simple. It's four chords. It's just D, F, G, and A.
Yeah.
It's not, it's not rocket science, but it really works. And it's another one of those intros where although the chords are simple, like McCartney's bass line underneath it is really helping to kind of anchor it down. It gives it a bit of weight that if it was just kind of the chords or just playing the root notes, it wouldn't have. It's quite a nice bass line. It's not as most complex, but it's got a really good groove going with the rest of the song. It fits it very well. It's almost sort of jigsawy, and that intro really benefits from that. You can tell that McCartney's put, if anything, a bit more thought into the bass line than the basic structure of the song, but it still works really well. And the song itself is sort of musically pretty straightforward. There's what, 3, 6, 10, 9 or 10 chords in it. None of them very complex. It's not a super difficult song, but it's the utility of it that really comes through. And again, the way that bass line just locks in and just anchors everything, even under something simple as just like a 4 chord strum in the introduction, gives the song some real juice.
You perhaps subconsciously referred to something that was a complaint of Harrison and Lennon in later Beatles years, that when you said McCartney's put a lot more effort into his bass on this, in that the accusation was that he tended to do that for his own songs rather than for those of the others. So yeah, that's maybe a trend to keep an eye on as we progress further through their musical development.
Absolutely, yeah.
But
But
it's useful in the introduction it lands you right in. It's almost like an in media res kind of thing. The song is going. It's almost like they'd started to play and then they switched the tape on, and that's the bit that we hear. So you can almost imagine opening the door in to Abbey Road Studios, and the song is already underway when you start to hear it, which I like, rather than that, and it works in some of the other ones, that big dramatic opening that says, here is the start of the song, and now here's the rest of the song. I like it. It lands you right in the middle of it. It's already going. It's already chirpy and chugging along.
exactly. Well, I mean, the last song is one of the best exemplars of that. Help, starts with that one big massive chord, and then
Yeah.
here's your song. But yeah, it's effective. It punches you in and gets you going. And this is I kind of like this song. Like, it is, you described it as overlooked, which I think is fair. And I'm probably guilty of that as well. I probably have like overlooked it a fair bit, but it's one of the nice things about doing this is to come back to these
Yeah.
little bits and pieces, and it's a nice little song. It's not crucial. It's not vital. It's not making it, probably not making anybody's like top 20 list or whatever, but it's just a really well put together song that shows the craft and the skill of, I was going to say everyone involved, mostly everyone involved. Lennon isn't at the fore for this one, but even so, he's still contributing something. That electric piano does good work there. So yeah, it's just a really well crafted pop song.
And the backing vocals are pretty effective
I
as well.
love
Even
the
if
backing vocals. They're very funny. They make me smile every time.
it's John and George at their most nasally
Yeah, I,
as
I
well.
would I would assume sort of semi-intentionally. It sounds like maybe they're not directly taking the piss, but they're certainly not taking it.
I
They're
reckon
not,
they're
not
pretty
deadly
close.
artists, I think it's
Yeah.
fair to say.
So in terms of the song being overlooked, just to you mentioned about it not being in anyone's top 20. Um, it is number 49 in Rolling Stones magazine's best 100 Beatles tracks,
Okay, well, that's interesting. That's quite high.
which is very weird, to be honest. So it's kind of it's well, I would say middle of the road, but then of course there were a lot more than 100. So but also, and I must admit, I didn't look up exactly which poll this was, but I did read that it was voted the ninth, and wait for the qualifier, the ninth best Beatles track pre Rubber Soul. No,
Yeah, no,
but well,
no, but
yeah, but well,
I'd need to hear the case for the prosecution. I think I'm not convinced by that. Not by a long
but
stretch.
if you wanted more evidence, let me quote you exactly what John Lennon said in his 1980 Playboy interview when asked about the night before. He said, "That's Paul again. I'll just say it's Paul," meaning I don't remember anything about it except it was in the movie Help. End quote.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know. I like this song, but that's also it's not a
Yeah.
completely unfair fate for it
Oh,
either.
it is. Yeah. And I think McDonald is unfairly dismissive of it as well. Because I mean, it is fun, but it is, and this is sort of a bit of a theme that I have about some Beatles songs. It's one of those where you don't want to poke at it too much, because if you start poking at it too much, you'll find flaws in it. There are some nice-ish things about the lyrics, but if you look a bit too closely, you then start to think, well, actually, a woman's allowed to change her mind. What are you worrying about, McCartney? Get over yourself. Or if you sort of say it's nice, fun, upbeat, it's the best Monkeys track before the Monkeys came along. That's great. But then if you start to think about it too much, there's that, the last night is the night that I remember section, and the way that ends before going back into the verse, you think, oh, it's a little bit cheesy. But don't tug at it too hard. Just enjoy it for what it is, which is why I am, you know, self-professed world's worst Beatles fan, because there are times when just don't look too hard. Don't buy that reissue. Don't read that box set material. It's not worth it, really.
Well, I think there's a slight case to be made that you kind of alluded to this earlier, but this is kind of almost McCartney writing a Lennon song. You know, it feels quite Lennon-esque in terms of the way that it's talking about, its subject matter, the protagonist.
Yeah,
It's got that slightly Lennon-y feel, and if you wanted to be generous about the lyric, you could say it's kind of like a gender flipped kind of thing, as oh, rather than the man treating the woman as a one night stand, the woman is treating the man as a one night stand, and maybe that's slightly progressive for 1965. It might be a bit of a reach, but if you wanted to make that case, I guess you probably could. I don't think the lyric quite supports that read, but it's a possibility, but it's pretty straightforward stuff, really.
it is straightforward. I think the construction of it is quite interesting. Where you're sort of talking about what happened the night before, and you're kind of listing the things with the refrain of the night before from the backing singers. So that's quite an interesting thing. It is fairly straightforward in terms of the language that gets used, but I don't mind there was the internal rhyme of when I held you near, you were so sincere. So there's some things going on there, and actually, because I did, I listener, I should confess that when I made the comment about the Lennon quote from the night before, I did hold up the All We Are Saying, the book by David Sheff, which was the last. It's basically the full version of the Playboy interview. You wouldn't have been able to see me hold it up, so I'm going to confess to having read that and really enjoyed it so far. But one of the things that Lennon says in here is that Paul McCartney is a good lyricist when he tries, but most of the time he just doesn't try. He just sort of throws out some words on the page and thinks that'll do, which is quite interesting because I'm pretty sure that's something I've suggested on here before. And I'm not going to suggest that McCartney's made a massive effort here, but I certainly think he's had a go at writing something a little bit different, having that slightly more sophisticated construction. And
I'm having a hard time imagining the word sincere being used in the previous album.
oh,
Um,
I
and
agree. I agree.
and even if
Yeah,
that doesn't seem like a massive paradigm shift, it's still a step in the right direction.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And this notion of, were you telling lies or was I so unwise? Okay, so could be you, could be me. Oh, I don't know. It's at least trying something. And I don't get the self-pity in here that sort of comes through from Lennon. And I know that some people would disagree with that notion of self-pity. It is just a personal view, but I think a lot of Lennon's early lyrics are quite self-pitying. Anyway, move
Well,
on.
yeah, no, I mean, I also agree with that, but that I think it is because there is that suggestion of I was just say suggestion of duality. That's far too pretentious. But like there are alternative points of view. Were you telling lies, or was I? You know, it's like, oh,
Yeah,
did I misread the situation? That stops it from just being a, oh God, I've been taken advantage of, or oh, how could she do this to me? Blah blah blah. It stops it from becoming a completely kind of like Lennon-esque lyric. It has that scope to admit, well, actually, yeah, maybe this was my fault. Maybe I just misread the situation. Maybe not. Maybe it was the other person. Maybe they did screw me over. But it's yeah, and that's enough. It's enough to elevate it out of that kind of slightly mordant self pity.
yeah, and I like the refrain of "treat me like you did the night before." Um, at least suggests that there was a genuine connection. It's a nice kind of plea, actually. There, the bits that again that really don't work for me is again the bit that sort of enters into the cabaret territory. Last night is a night I will remember you by. When I think of things we did, it makes me want to cry. And we go back into, I think that when I think of things we did, it makes me want to cry. Yeah, that's a little bit yucky. But here I am, I'm tugging on that thread that I said we shouldn't tug on.
Well, we are a podcast. That's what we're here for.
Yes.
Thread tugging to the stars.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, okay, how about this then? The guitar solo.
It's great. I really, really like it. It's that double guitar solo, and that's a really interesting sound. It does kind of stand out. Again, it's iterative rather than a massive paradigm shift. But we've seen the increasing sophistication with which those kind of things can be delivered, and having McCartney and Harrison doubling each other on the guitar solo just produces an interesting sound that we haven't really heard before. It's not just George Harrison doing his like Chet Atkins tribute act, and it's
Yeah.
not just McCartney proving that he's a technical guitarist. I had to stop myself from swearing there. But yeah,
There's certainly a feel to it, isn't there? It's a
yeah.
vibe guitar solo,
Yeah, and
really.
it doesn't sound like they're doing an impression of someone else. It sounds like it's a Beatles guitar solo, and
Yeah.
I think that's really the key element of it. It's not derivative in any way.
Although, ironically, of course, in my mind, it's derivative of the Monkeys, even though it comes out a year before the Monkeys are even thought of,
Well,
which is, which I realise is completely the wrong way round to think about it. Obviously, the Monkeys are very derivative of. So anyway,
I know.
but let's not even
So it's a
get
progenitor.
into that. It's certainly yeah, it's fun. And I know I sort of read something that said that actually no, the guitar solo is just McCartney double tracked, and then other people say it's McCartney and Harrison, and it doesn't matter to me. It's a vibing guitar solo that kind of fits the mood, doesn't it? And
Yeah.
and just keeps the whole thing swinging and get and moving forward to its ultimately timely conclusion. So it's good fun.
Yeah, it's not a long song, this one, which I think is also to its benefit. I know song timings are something that we discuss quite often on the podcast, and we're just fractionally over 2.5 minutes with this one, but I think that's probably right. I think that's exactly the right amount of length for the amount of material this song could
Yeah,
justify. It wouldn't be better for having a much more extended instrumental break. It wouldn't be any better for having an extra verse in it or whatever. It does what it does and it goes away again, and that's absolutely fine. It,
yeah.
it, it is kind of the right length.
If it was any longer, I think you would really notice the fact that it's just a verse repeated
Yeah, I think
with
yes.
that kind of break in between. And by the time you get to the guitar solo, you sort of think, "Oh, phew! Thank the Lord, there's something a little bit different here." Before then going back, I think then it's just one verse and then the conclusion, and it works in that respect. And bear in mind, how long you said it is, and 12 seconds of that is taken up with the long musical introduction. So, but it's fine. They were writing quickly, they were recording quickly. You wouldn't necessarily expect them to be doing the epics at this point, really, would you?
No, but I mean,
So
even the little attention to detail, little things like the yes that gets dropped in, which just give it a slightly more spontaneous feel than if it was like
yeah,
a really completely clean recording. I'm sure they're very very planned, very it happens twice, and but this is just a little touch. It's just that little extra detail that you just don't really get elsewhere, and it does make a big difference.
noticeable that they only played this live once, and that was on their last BBC radio appearance, which again speaks for that not exactly fly by night, but that sense that it's not they didn't consider it to be a major piece of work.
Exactly, even
Although
although it's in the film.
yeah, although its position in the film and its position on the album is different, which threw me at first because it does come sort of about, I mean, maybe a third to halfway through the film on Salisbury Plain, whereas it's song two on the album. And it works on the album. I think it works after Help because it's a little bit more light-hearted than Help. So it just sort of reminds people that hey, this is meant to be fun. And I suppose that then is also kind of in keeping with the tone of the film, which is all about fun. Whereas if you were going to go straight from Help into, I think you're going to lose that girl, isn't it? That comes next on the on this on the film. That perhaps there's just it's just a little too similar in terms of that feeling. So yeah, yeah, surprised that they weren't going quite as literal as perhaps they were on A Hard Day's Night um, track order, but it does work.
Yeah. And that Help the Night Before is a good 1-2 opening punch in the album before you get to you've got to go, hide your love away. So
Yeah,
it
yeah.
lets you kind of get those under your belt. You get it, and then you start to sort of move on. You transition into something maybe a little bit more. What's the adjective I'm looking for here? That's
Pretentious,
the one.
ponderous,
Thoughtful, considered. No, no, pretentious. That
no,
was the one. Yeah, yeah.
plagiaristic. Is that even anyway?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that discussion.
Yeah, yeah, me too. What do you think? I mean, I'm asking this in the sure and certain knowledge that I already have the answer to it. What do you think of that sequence in the movie, Andrew?
What? Which one? Sorry,
The
the
Salisbury Plain, Night Before.
Oh, yeah, no, it's yeah, no. Okay, right. At this point, then, I'm going to refer back to the Lennon book because he makes a comment about how brilliant that film is. Because let's
Is
see,
that because he hasn't seen it?
well, quite. So I realised looking back how advanced it was. I mean, it's how advanced it was. Wait. It was a precursor for the Batman Pow Wow on TV, that kind of stuff.
Full of shit sometimes, Lennon, isn't he?
Well, hey, look, I think amongst Beatles pods and Beatles Twitter and so on and so forth, I think we might, if anyone even paid any attention to what we said, we probably get quite a hard time because I think there are a lot of people out there who seem to have a lot of affection for this film.
Okay. Well, I mean, we'll keep our powder dry in the on the film discussion. We don't want to go too far into that, since obviously we will be discussing it once we get the album out of the way.
No, I think in fairness, it's a bit late for that. If anyone's heard the last pod in which I was referring to how problematic some of its depictions of, well, anything are. So
Some of his depictions of the Beatles, never mind anything else.
yeah,
Yeah. Anyway,
yeah.
anyway, anyway. Yeah.
So yeah, so I think basically what we're saying is it's a nice enough song, and much like this episode of the podcast, it doesn't overstay its welcome.
What an excellent way of moving us towards our score. That was done with grace and elegance and an
Thank you.
almost preternaturally well considered touch. Right, good. What do you want to score this one?
Oh, it's a big fat six, isn't it? It's yeah, it's good, but it's not that good.
I'm going to go slightly higher, but when I say slightly higher, I mean 6.5. Uh,
I love how detailed this section has become.
we do seem to have invested more time, thought, and energy into this than any other section of the podcast. Obviously, that is a complete lie, and I apologize. Right, good. Okay, we can wrap that one up there, and we can tell you that you can really get a hold of us. You can contact us by email. We are BeatlesStuffology@gmail.com. We are on Twitter at Beatles_ology. We are Beatles on Instagram. And you can find my blog at www.jgmcquarrie.scot. Normally at this point I would plug my Star Trek podcast, but because I've been having some health issues, unfortunately I have chosen to discontinue doing that for the time being. But I do want to say very best of luck to Kev, who I believe will be continuing it. Edit. But I do want to say the very best of luck to Kev, who's been awesome and helped me put it together. And yeah, it's been fun. Please like, rate, and review us on whatever podcatcher you're using so that more people can find the show. Next episode, we have You've Got to Hide Your Love Away. But until then, keep listening.